Hello, Home Slices. It's Kara with Home Slice Adulting coming to you with my review for Iyanla Fix My Life, Season 7, Episode 3, The Mask We Wear, featuring Luenell and her daughter, Luenell. First off, thanks for clicking on this video. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I love to hear from you all and hear your thoughts or additional feedback on my reviews, just to make it feel more of like a community and a conversation. So be sure you do that and click on the notification bell so that you can be notified when I post new videos. So again, this is Iyanla's final season. And of course, I've been reviewing Iyanla for a few seasons now, so I had to come back and do it. So my hope is that I can remain consistent and on top of things when it comes to Iyanla Fix My Life. I really enjoy her show, and as always, I try to take some things that I've learned from her show and apply them to my own life. So free therapy. Okay, so anyways, this particular episode we have Luenell, who is a famous comedian. She's been in a bunch of stuff and she's always around. So and she has this particular brand of comedy. It's pretty irreverent. She doesn't care. Okay, so that's on brand for her. And she has a daughter who's 24 years old named Luenell. Was not aware that Luenell even had kids. But yeah, they have a certain type of relationship that they would like to make better. So we see Iyanla meet Luenell at a comedy club and ask her to prepare a short set. And I thought that the set was funny. I thought she talked about being a stripper at a place called Beefy's, where all the strippers were a little heavier, a little plus size. And that she did it to pay for her daughter's tuition. I thought it was really funny. And she talked about how some of that was embellishment. But you know, what comedian doesn't embellish? Okay. So anyways, she is basically saying that she wants to tone down the perception that she is an angry Black woman. And she confesses that she is an angry Black woman. And so as a person who is in a predominantly white institution, and as the only Black woman in my cohort in grad school, there is a obvious stereotype threat of being categorized as the angry Black woman. And the problem with that is what happens when you're actually angry. So I understand what she's trying to get at, but Iyanla wants to know if she's ready to get to the root of that anger. And she says that she's open to the process, but there are some excuses. And she acknowledges that she has kind of made up some excuses. But Iyanla is like, I want you to walk into your wisdom years and be able to benefit from that and be able to command respect and have the benefit of being the OG in the game and being the best comedian, which she, you know, self-professed to be. So she wants to challenge what Luenell thinks is working for her right now and to surrender control. And so she gives her the assignment of collecting some of the baggage that she left around the comedy club. So next we see Iyanla talking to Luenell. Luenell is a beautiful girl. Apparently she's a dancer. She's 24 years old. And she basically says that when things are good, they're good. But when they're bad, they're bad. And by bad, it's typically when her mom isn't able to see her and when their busy lives get in the way of them being able to see each other. Apparently there was a 6-year time period where she didn't live with her mom. Her mom had left her in Oakland, I think it was, and her mom moved to LA to pursue her career. And during that time, she really didn't see her mom very often. So her mom basically leaves her over and over. And Luenell avoids the pain and wears a mask and is very stone-faced. Because she is avoiding the pain of what it means to be left over and over again from her mom, and confesses that she really doesn't know who her mom is beyond the celebrity, and then doesn't really think that her mom knows her. And when you think about growing up, when you think about being a child, or when you think about raising a child, knowing who your child is starts from the younger years, like when they start to develop their personalities, when they start to develop their tastes, when they start telling you what they want to do when they grow up, and you get a feel for who that child is. And if you miss those formative years, you really miss on the foundational pieces of who that person is. And even though it was 6 years and it was many years ago, there's still this element of not really knowing who each other is, even though they're back in each other's lives and apparently more involved in each other's lives. So they still need to work on actually getting to know each other from missing those foundational years. And Danelle, is worrying that it's too late for her mom to really get to know her. And they spend a lot of time away from each other. They don't really talk about it. And it comes across as her being very cold. And she doesn't feel like she's comfortable telling Luenell about the pain that she experiences around the fact that her mom wasn't there for her for that time period. Is because Luenell takes it as an attack and it immediately turns nasty. And based on what we've seen from Luenell, that doesn't sound far-fetched. So next we see Iyanla take Danelle into a room that has some chairs with some masks on it, and each mask has a word across it, like broken spirit, fear, and stuff like that. And so Danelle begins to identify certain things that apply to her mother. Oh, excuse me, y'all. Things that apply to her mother that are written on the mask, and basically feels like all of the masks in that little audience have some type of relevance to her mother, and she particularly picks out the broken spirit part. And there was one thing that really came across in that for me. I wouldn't consider myself an entertainer. I am a lackadaisical YouTuber. I don't post on social media very often. Every once in a while I'll sing at karaoke or something like that, but I wouldn't consider myself a performer. But something that people don't often think about is, if you're an entertainer and your livelihood is based off of auditions and stuff like that, the number of times that you get told no is astounding. And so to be an entertainer, to be a female entertainer, to have the type of comedy that Luenell has in her lifetime, in her career, she's heard no over and over again. And that contributes to her broken spirit. And that's something that I hadn't really thought of. But she also puts out fear. And she even says that her mom is not a good person because her mom wasn't there for her, that she is dismissive of her feelings, and that she can't be honest with her mother because her mom will attack. And Iyanla wants to point out that to Luenell, it looks like she's putting up a mask, but to everyone else, she looks like a rabid hyena. And that people don't see a mask when you show up with a mask on. They see your behavior as a result of that mask, which comes across as someone who's being aggressive and attacking. So Iyanla wants to get Danelle to tell her mother the truth and trust that her mom can handle it. And she says something really interesting after that. She says, earlier today, you told me that you and your mother have a good relationship. And I believe that you all have roles, that you play roles, and that you don't really have a relationship. And that really kind of stuck with me a little bit, because they're playing the role of mother and daughter. But the fact that they don't know each other, can you really be in relationship with somebody who doesn't know you? So I think that there was some validity to what Iyanla said, and now they have to work on building a relationship. So now it happens like apparently all the time, where there's something that happens in the process and people just break down. Okay. There's always a Shay who's cursing Iyanla out and leaving the process or something like that because of something that's going on. Luenell is upset because she has been sequestered or whatever to a specific area of the house. It's dark. There are no lights on. I don't know why there was no lights on. That was weird. And I guess she was asked to sit there and just wait for Iyanla to finish talking to Danelle. But Luenell is basically saying, I want to throw a chair through the window, throw some cushions outside, and jump out this window. And basically escape because she felt like it was taking too long. And this goes back to some issues with control that Iyanla had kind of talked to her about a little earlier. And she says it feels like I'm sitting in a holding cell. And so we see one of the other therapists that is with Iyanla talk to her about that. And she was like, did Iyanla talk to you about a lack of control before? And Luenell was like, yeah, I feel like I'm in a holding cell. So I'm assuming Luenell has been to jail. They didn't really talk about that, but the way she said holding cell and the way that it was a trigger for her, kind of made me think that at some point that might have been a reality for her, but I'm not sure. So she realizes, by the time she meets up with Iyanla, she realized that she was triggered and she was remembering a time when she wasn't in control and basically couldn't get to Danelle. And I'm guessing that's during that 6-year time period when she didn't see her daughter. And so we go into Luenell's background a little bit and find out things that definitely did not know before. And not that I knew a lot about her. I knew of her. I've seen her in things, seen her in movies, seen her on TV shows, but have not necessarily known a lot of personal things about her. Apparently, she feels abandoned by her family and siblings. Her father was murdered when she was still in her mother's womb. Apparently, her mother's brother murdered her dad, and her mom gave her away. And she believes that her mother did this consciously. And Iyanla was basically trying to get her to understand. So your mother already had 7 kids and you were the 8th. And while she was pregnant with you, her love was murdered by her brother. Do you really think that she was able to make a conscious decision? And Luenell was just not letting up. And part of me really understood where Luenell was coming from and then also understood where Iyanla was coming from. And I feel like Luenell was not letting her mother off the hook, particularly because of the pain that she felt around being abandoned or feeling abandoned by her mother. Another piece of it, I think, is that Iyanla's response was very mature. Like these are thoughts and feelings that you get to once you're at a point of really deep self-reflection and deep healing. And we'll talk a little bit about that later as their conversation progresses. But I thought it was weird because if we put the shoe on the other foot, Luenell made a conscious decision to leave her daughter behind and focus on her career. So while we're talking about conscious decisions, you obviously made a conscious decision to leave your daughter behind. So let's try to have some mercy on your mother who was going through some emotional stuff. And it was a part of why she gave you away to some other family members. But she feels there were some other things that came up. She was grabbing some masks out of those bags that she had picked up at the comedy club. And she feels like she's not seen as an individual, that the only time people see or hear her is through her career. And that people don't see her as an individual, a human being, a mother. And that they only see her as a comedian or a spectacle. She acknowledges that she doesn't really know her daughter and that her daughter doesn't really know her, and that she developed this wall or this door, I think she called it, as a coping mechanism, because whenever she would go to pick up her daughter, she would just cry and cry and cry about not being there for her daughter and not knowing her. So she developed a coping mechanism. And Iyanla was like, well, what if that coping mechanism looked like you closed the door and moved on with your life to your daughter? For you, it was a way for you to stop crying every time you went to go see her. But for your daughter, it felt like you closed the door in her face and moved on with your life. And Luenell was in denial about that. And I find that really interesting and not surprising, because her daughter said anytime I try to have a conversation with her about her actions and how they made me feel or what type of pain they caused me, Luenell goes on attack mode. And it's not surprising to me that Luenell does not know her daughter's pain around that area of her life. So we find out that Luenell lived with her aunt and uncle, and that her uncle was physically and verbally abusive, and that her siblings and her mom did not rescue her from that environment. And again, Luenell was like not letting them off the hook and was basically saying they should have moved heaven and hell to come and get me. And Iyanla is saying, well, you're making it about you when it really is about them. And I had to rewatch this part a second time to really grasp what Iyanla was saying. But basically, Luenell in that situation was a victim, because the people who were supposed to care about her in her life didn't get her out of a situation that she shouldn't have been in. But I think Iyanla's point was, the reason they didn't get you out of that situation is because they didn't know any better and they couldn't do any better. They didn't have the tools, they didn't have the capacity to do it differently. And Iyanla brings up a story that we've heard her tell before about her being 9 years old and her uncle sexually assaulting her. And she basically tells her aunt right away, and her aunt doesn't believe her after confronting her uncle. And Iyanla said it took me years to realize that it wasn't personal. And Luenell is like, it is absolutely personal. That's rhetoric. And if you think about how old Iyanla is, and think about Iyanla's age minus 9, I'm not sure how old she is, but I would imagine she's in her 60s. So if we think 50 years ago or so, about 50 years ago, we think about the mentality in Black families around sexual assault. We think about the mentality in families about sexism, about the man being the end all be all, the head of the family. We think about the how children are diminished. This is my experience talking about my perception of what it means to be a Black person in a Black family. Children are to be seen and not heard. So in a moment where you're supposed to hear your child, an adult saying anything is worth more than what a child has to say. And so when you consider all of the social, societal aspects of what it means to hear somebody say, your husband sexually assaulted me, and not knowing how to process that information, not knowing how to challenge what you know to be truth in your society and in your household. I don't know if her aunt could even actually process what would have been the next step. If her aunt had believed her, and we don't know if she did, I think that it's possible that her aunt actually believed what happened. What would have been the next process? If she calls the police, she loses her husband and maybe the main income of the household. If we think about it in that light and figure out that either she didn't know how to challenge the way things were in her household, or if challenging the way things were in her household was too costly to her, it wasn't that she did this against Iyanla, right? It wasn't that she was denying, dismissing, invalidating her niece. It was that she didn't have the capacity or the tools to know how to handle the situation in a way that would have validated her niece. I hope I explained that right. It took me a while to kind of understand what Iyanla was saying, but it wasn't personal. It wasn't that she hated Iyanla, it's that she just didn't know how to do it different. And when we think about 50 years ago, and we think about how far, women's rights have come, and we think about how far raising children, like child rearing, and how that has changed, and what we know about sexual assault and stuff like that, it's just different. And I think Luenell's point was just, I'm not letting them off the hook. I think she was so wrapped up in holding them accountable, I guess, or blaming them, that she couldn't see that they actually didn't know what to do to help her, or didn't have the capacity to help her. Or, I mean, or they weighed the pros versus the cons. If we take her out of that house and bring her over here with us, that's one more mouth to feed. At least over there, she's in a 2-person household with a good income. And if she has to take a beating or some verbal abuse, maybe that's worth it. Like, who knows? But the point, I get the point that Iyanla was trying to say, and Luenell just was not buying it. And hopefully maybe she'll get it, but maybe she won't. But anyways, let's move on. Iyanla was telling Luenell that she has vices that are covering her heart, and that Luenell is a victim. And they bring up the part about feeling important. And Luenell was like, it would be a shock to me if Danelle didn't feel important. And Iyanla was like, well, if you don't feel important, how can you make somebody else feel important? And I think Luenell kind of understood that. And Luenell, was really upset by thinking about how she had hurt her daughter. So it's a new day. We have Danelle, Iyanla, and Luenell. And before Luenell walks into the room, Danelle is basically giving permission. Iyanla's giving Danelle permission to share with her mother, as if we're just two women talking, as opposed to me being your mom. And that is one thing that I struggle with sometimes. And it's not just, it's easier with my mom. It's more difficult with other adults who are in my village. I'll say that. Yes, there are moments where I've evaluated my relationship with other adults in my village. And when I say my village, like among the people who raised me throughout my life, I have a hard time making that, not feeling like a little girl when I connect with them again. Because I don't, like with my mom, she got to see me grow up. I am in contact with her all the time. But these other people who are in my village and help raise me, there are longer periods of time between now and like when I was a kid and when they were more of a presence in my life. So making that transition of like, I'm an adult now, for whatever reason, for me personally, is very difficult, because I have always felt, in my family in particular, and again, I don't know if this is a race thing. I don't know if it's my family or whatever, but it's always, don't think you're too grown. And that just bothers the heck out of me. I am a few months away from having my master's in business administration. I just purchased a house this summer. I am less than a year away from marrying my fiance. I have nobody else is paying my bills. Nobody else is buying me stuff. Nobody else is helping to take care of my car or my insurance or any of that stuff. I am too old. It's one of those things. Don't think that you're too old to be blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I'm an adult though. And so in my life, it's very hard for me to create this distinction of like, I'm an adult now. I don't have to feel the anxiety I used to feel as a child when I'm talking to you. Because in my family, it was a very thin line between respectful and disrespectful. And talking with the wrong tone, with the wrong inflection, with too much excitement or anger in your voice, or smacking your teeth, or looking like you rolled your eyes, or breathing too hard. You know what I'm saying? There was always a very thin line between being disrespectful and being respectful. And I always had to toe that line. And not having to do that anymore, or creating this separation in my mind of I'm an adult now, is so hard for me sometimes. So I liked that Iyanla gave Luenell permission to talk to her like an adult and not like a child. And Luenell, even though she was given that permission, still had a hard time. The things that she was saying to her mother, the cadence with which she was saying it to her mother, came across as like a child talking to their mom, and their mom just not being able to respond in the moment. I think she kind of gained a little bit momentum later on, but at first it was very pensive. And Iyanla had to remind her, I gave you a hall pass. Tell her about the rage, the mask that she had. It was rage, pain, and you don't know me. But she opened up about the abandonment that she feels and how they don't know each other, and how her mom can be controlling, and how helping her pack is hard for her because she's just helping her mom leave again. And so Luenell steps in and repeats back the stuff that she heard from her daughter. And then she says something really interesting, which like really stood out to me. And she was basically saying, I thought you liked helping me pack because you were eager to see me go. I thought you were relieved when I left town. And I thought that was so interesting. It's always interesting when you have things that are happening, history that has happened in relationships, and you don't talk about that history. Everybody makes up in their own mind what it means. They both are packing, but in Luenell's mind, I'm just helping her leave my life again the same way she left my life all throughout my childhood. In Luenell's mind, I'm having her help me pack because I know she's going to be eager to see me leave, because I wasn't there for her previously, and it revolved around guilt and shame. And that's why it's really important to have conversations about this type of stuff with the people that are in your life, because if you don't, everybody's just going to make up their own story in their own mind. So Luenell wants them to talk more often. And she acknowledges that she's passed down some bad stuff to her daughter, and that she doesn't want that to happen in the future. Uh, when Luenell decides to have kids. And then she acknowledges something else, that I wonder if other celebrities or people who are very rich or have other high stature jobs, she acknowledges to her daughter, you come before everybody except my job. And that makes me sad. And I thought that was really, really interesting. And I heard the acknowledgement, and I believe that she was sincere. And I'm curious if she's going to do anything about it. Is she going to make her daughter feel more important than her job? Is that something she's even interested in? And that's something that we didn't get to see. But moving on. One thing that Luenell said that she needed that she didn't get from her mom is basically just a few words saying, I will be back. Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'll be back. All I needed to hear from you is that you were coming back. And the fact that you didn't tell me that you were coming back caused me a lot of pain and anxiety of not knowing when you would come back or if you would come back. And Luenell was like, I'll never leave you like that again. So Iyanla gives them both hall passes to use when they're having conversations. And whenever those hall passes go up, it's not a mother-daughter conversation anymore. It's a woman-to-woman conversation. And then we see that Luenell has a few messages from some female comedians stating their support. Sherry Shepherd, Laura Hayes, Kim Whitley. And for the first time in the history of Iyanla Fix My Life, a guest gets Iyanla a gift. And when Iyanla said, this is the first time a guest has ever given me a gift, And Luenell was like, well, you ain't never had nobody on your show like me, which is so true. But I'm almost shocked that after 7 seasons and 100+ episodes, right, that nobody else has ever given Iyanla a gift. That's kind of crazy. Um, that's crazy. Crazy and almost unbelievable. But anyways, at the end of the show, we see that Danelle and Luenell say that they're doing better and they're still a work in progress, which, of course, you can't undo 24 years of trauma in a few weeks. So I hope that they're working on their relationship, that it's getting better, and that things are working out for their family. But this was a good episode. It brought up a lot of stuff for me personally. And I don't know. I learned a lot of stuff about Luenell that I didn't know. And I'm curious to see if this will make some type of impact in the types of projects and stuff that she does in the future. But thanks so much for watching this video. Have a great day. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Tell me what you thought in the comments below. Follow me on social media. That information will be below in the description box. And that's all I got to say. Peace out, home slices.